Not a full meal. Lots of spices, haven't they? But maybe they're missing the protein just right now.
Spices and protein.
Tipping Liverpool to stay up this year.
Thanks for explaining how the Premier League works then.
Enjoy that now.
No.
Hello and welcome to a brand new year and a brand new episode of the Football Times podcast with myself, RadioTimes.com sport editor Michael Potts, and I'm joined in the still virtual studio by Mr. Jake Wilson of BBC Match of the Day magazine. How are you doing? Happy New Year. Well, it's not really Happy New Year, it's just sort of New Year. But how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm still doing it. I'm popping those imaginary party poppers. We're back, Michael. The highlights of the year so far, obviously. I'm buzzing to be back, mate.
That is an incredibly, incredibly low bar. It's not been a worldie so far. It's not been a great year. But, you know, we do what we do. And we are back every week. Hopefully every Thursday we'll be back to bring you some of the big previews of Premier League games on TV that weekend, as well as a bit of chat. This week we're going to be discussing and looking at a few of the Premier League title race contenders, of which there are many, and a little bit of fantasy Premier League for you as well, ahead of a double game week. Just one double, but you get my drift. It's pretty big. We will, without any further ado, we'll crack straight into the game, shall we? And it's a bit of a big one. It's a bit of a big one if you're from the Midlands, if you're a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan. Good job, I've got one here. It's Wolves versus West Brom in the actual Midlands derby, as opposed to the sort of semi-Midlands derbies we talked about before. It's on BT Sport, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. It's Wolves versus West Brom. Wolves, not having a great one. How is it going? Because I feel like Wolves are one of those teams where everybody kind of feels that they've got them cracked, and we can all just say, "Oh yeah, they're a good team, probably on the edge of Europe." Oh, it's just Jimenez, you know, that's the issue. What's actually going on? Give us the lowdown.
I think you're right. It's a big derby for many reasons, but Wolves need this derby right now. There's been a lot of talk about Wolves. And the amount of young players that we keep playing. But I think it's good to recognise just how young these players that we've got in our squad are. A lot of them are younger than a lot of the Aston Villa squad that got beaten by Liverpool. They had 20, 21-year-olds at the back. We're playing 20, 21-year-olds week in, week out, not batting an eyelid. Just for one, Fabio Silva is the youngest Premier League player to start a game this season by 6 months. And he's playing every week because our options are that thin. Nuno wants this, though. He wants a young squad. But injuries, they have happened to basically every squad in the Premier League this year. But teams like Wolves and Leeds, who pick to have thin squads, we've struggled as much as anyone. Jimenez obviously is the big miss. He really is a talisman up front, and without him we have really struggled. 4 goals, it is that cutting edge that we really miss. Silva's not there. Patrick Cutrone has just come back from Fiorentina, but he barely played there. He scored a few goals when the first lockdown, the first of all the lockdowns,
The first
ended
of the many.
over in Italy. But we really don't have the options. Podence is injured. Traore's had a knock. We've got no money, by the sounds, to buy anyone new. We've got to find a way here. And going forward, it's bleak.
So sounds like apart from that, everything's fine.
But the strength, let me get positive. Let me bring a positive in here, because I want to talk about Ruben Neves. Okay, we all know, we've all heard Ruben Neves is this, Ruben Neves is that. He's a brilliant player, but I'm not sure everyone's quite understood what makes him so brilliant. He had a bit of a low point beginning of the season. He wasn't really on it, but last few weeks, he has been back to his best. Yes, he scores screamers, and no, he hasn't scored a screamer in a while. He scored from inside the box from the first time in the Premier League the other day. Tidy. But it's his work off and on the ball that is so brilliant. So his passing is unbelievable. His big switches, him and Cody constantly just switching play, passing all over the shop. But his tackling is first rate. Neves is tackling ability, and the amount of tackles that he makes in a game really does do a job shielding our defence. And he's been a bright light in a very overcast December and January for Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Absolutely. And are there any sort of frustrations maybe with Nuno? I know it's easy to point fingers at managers, and what's the sort of vibe towards Nuno at the minute? Is there still sort of the majority trusting him? Is there a bit of a divide? Is there a bit of like, us v them, want him out, want him in? Is there a bit of any splits starting to open up there?
There's a couple. You see the rumblings on the social media. I don't think there's people calling for him in large numbers to be out, but I think there are a few frustrations with what people perceive to be mistakes over lineups. Obviously, we've got the back four, the back five that we play with. So I think there's always debates there, and a few substitutions. Some players coming in that maybe aren't ready. Vitinha, we've played a few times now, and he really doesn't look just ready yet for the Premier League stage. But I think a lot of the frustration is the lack of transfer activity this window, as it will be with most Premier League clubs, to be honest. January is going to be very quiet, but I think Nuno's been told that there is no money for a striker. There is no Costa coming in. There is no Origi coming in. That's why Cutrone's back. Do with that what you can, essentially. So we might see Owen Otasawi, the American central defensive midfielder, played in a 9 again. But yeah, I think it's one of those.
Interesting. And they're obviously up against West Brom in a big derby game, which if that doesn't spark life into the team, then what will? And West Brom, not going well. The Big Sam sort of effect hasn't quite happened yet. I'm still backing it. I'm still fully backing it. But it's very uncharacteristic for... Well, I guess I feel like West Brom have always been quite a tough side to beat. Like they always seem to come up with these tough sides. And like going back to things like Gary Megson's sort of West Brom days, and like back in the day, some of those awful West Brom sides, they were always a little bit tougher to beat. Oh, they felt a little bit tougher to beat. There was always a bit of grit about them. I don't know. Maybe that's just perception. Maybe that's just how I perceived them over the years.
I get you. And they always had like a rondon, didn't they? They always had like a one guy.
Yeah.
That
Well,
would,
they had
like,
Lukaku for a while. Yeah, they had Lukaku for a while, and like they've had players like this who can just sort of battle and scrap their way to points. Not really feeling it with them at the moment. And obviously, like the last two games in the Premier League, they've lost them 4-0 and 5-0 to Leeds and Arsenal. It's not great, is it? Conceding 9, not scoring in your last 2. Drew with Blackpool at the weekend, League One Blackpool, lost on penalties. It's not great. I mean, they've conceded 39, which is more than anybody else in the league so far. Only one of the teams conceded over 30, and that's Leeds with 33. So if you think about it, every team's conceded sort of 20-something, and West Brom on the verge of conceding 40, which is just like, you can't reasonably stay up without that bit of grit and without that bit of steel. And I mean, I guess they're pretty well placed to find it in Allardyce. But yeah, it just shows the importance of that defence, doesn't it? It's not just about sort of signing a couple of flary players. I know they've got Diangana and Pereira who can make things happen. But it's just about coming up with that rugged back line.
I think that's got to be the start point. It's now or never, really, for West Brom. They're not cut adrift by any means, but they are down in 19th. And this double game week, they've got Wolves and West Ham away. And if you lose both of those, and then you've got City following that, and then I know I'm going to 4th and 5th games, but then the following games after that are Fulham and Sheffield United. This is such a key run for West Brom. If you don't pick up many points here, you really could be cut adrift. However, if they are going to pick up a clean sheet, maybe against very goal-shy Wolves, it would, it could happen. We've not got loads of goals in us. We're always making chances, but if West Brom want to put down a marker, they're the back and they're changing, and Sammy is making an impact, a clean sheet at Molineux does that.
And a shout out to Sam Johnson as well, who I actually feel like is sort of playing his way into, dare I say, England contention. He has been fantastic this season whenever I've watched West Brom. And on the few times I have seen them, or on Match of the Day or whatever, he has been outstanding. He's made some great saves, which, I mean, that just goes to show how desperate the situation is in the back line. If Sam Johnson's probably probably saved another 5 or 6 that other keepers may have let in. So props to him. But yes, a big performance needed in the Midlands derby. What's your prediction? What is your prediction for this one, Mr. Wolves?
It can only go one way. I say Wolves 1-0. We haven't got loads of goals in us. West Brom haven't got loads of goals in them. Pereira's off the boil a little bit. He needs to come back to top form. He got 9 chances created against Sheffield United earlier this season, Matheus Pereira.
That's impressive.
If he brings that form back, he can do things for West Brom. But not this weekend, please.
I'm going with a 1-1 draw here. I agree. Not many goals in it, but I feel like yeah, that lack of firepower for Wolves maybe just a bit concerning. Moving on. So once you've wrapped that one up on BT Sport for your lunchtime kickoff, we move over to Fulham v Chelsea in another derby. Actually, the 3 games we're covering are all big derbies. Haven't even realised this. Happy accident.
Premier League's full of them. Full of them now.
Well, derby weekend. Sky Sports Premier League and main event 5:30 on Saturday. It's Fulham versus Chelsea, and I'm labelling this the tale of 2 coaches. We'll start with Scott Parker at Fulham. I really like Scott Parker. I'm a big fan of Scott Parker. He speaks very well. He comes across very well. I really enjoyed his bit of fireworks with Mourinho this week. Just a little bit of edge. I like him standing up for his team. He's the sort of guy I think footballers would probably want to play for. He's quite a charismatic character. Can't always read what's going on behind his head, but you can tell he loves the club. You can tell he wants to do well there. And credit to him that he's actually turning things around with Fulham, because they looked completely, they look like West Brom. They look completely defensively abject at the start of the season. And he's actually coaching them into some very solid, airtight form. Yeah,
and positive form too. Against Spurs, they played on the front foot for a large majority of the game. Scott Parker obviously wants his team to go and attack, and that's really good to see at the bottom. They're slightly less gung-ho than, say, a Leeds, who have got praised highly for their attacking intent. They concede slightly fewer, and their draw against Spurs, by all accounts, was widely deserved. It was nice to see Ivan Cavallero popping up with a header. He didn't score many of those for Wolves, and he hasn't for Fulham so far. But I think Fulham are in a similar spot. If they had a red hot goal scorer, as they once have, Bobby Zamora, maybe if he was back in the side, they could be much more comfortable than they are. I think they've got match winners in there, haven't they?
Yeah, Bobby Zamora. Yes, what Fulham need is Bobby Zamora. But they need Louis Sahar in that Pizza Hut jersey. That's what they need.
The dream.
Pizza. Their last 5 games, drawn them all, Fulham. So when we talk about that need for a match winner, surely it's right now. 1-1 draw against Liverpool, 0-0 with Brighton, 1-1 Newcastle, 0-0 Southampton, 1-1 Spurs. So there's 3 sort of tougher games in there, and they've come away with points in them all, which is quite admirable, really, considering at the start of the season they were, like I said, just conceding goals left, right, and centre. You hope the likes of Lookman can maybe just chip in with that match winner, that 90th minute, just something to nudge them over the line, turn those 1 points into 3 points. But it's interesting though, with Newcastle above them, Crystal Palace above them, Brighton above them, all wobbling at the minute, and none of them looking quite assured. I think it'll be quite a small relegation battle this year in terms of only a few teams in it. But Newcastle looks so bad at the moment. Sorry, this is a bit of a tangent. I just need to take the moment to say how bad Newcastle look, because that's quite fun. But they look so poor, and you just think Fulham, their trajectory is actually sort of a bit of an upward curve, and games like this against Chelsea, who are struggling a little bit at the moment, they'll be sort of licking their lips a little bit at games like this.
Definitely. Fulham are on for a decent season. It's not the best of seasons, but it's definitely not the worst of seasons.
Yeah, not Sheffield United, but moving into this West London derby, the tale of 2 coaches. We'll go over to Lampard now, and I feel like Scott Parker is doing exactly what Lampard needs to do in coaching the most out of the players at his disposal? Because I know the question marks now are going to be who can Chelsea bring in to like change the game here, and who can they buy and spend money and all that sort of stuff. Lampard has enough enough in that squad in pretty much all areas of that squad. I know you can always improve, you can always sign the better players in every position. They have a lot of talent there that is not hitting its potential right now. And I think the pressure, I like Lampard. Again, I think he's very similar to Parker. I like him, and I kind of believe him when he talks, and I believe that he is doing everything he possibly can. But we need to see this on the pitch now, don't we, really? Because Roman Abramovich will not wait around too long, regardless of Frank Lampard, his status. He won't wait too long to pull that trigger.
Yeah, you think he'd got all the pieces to that puzzle now, but his formation is posing a very tricky task for him. He's got the worst win percentage, Lampard, of any Chelsea manager in the Abramovich era, and that doesn't sound good. When rumours are coming out that Avram Grant's being touted to come and join your backroom staff, that's not a great sign. Grant, obviously, a very good manager at Portsmouth and Chelsea, but Lampard surely wants to be his own man. And what you said about getting the best out of the players at his disposal, surely that's what he did last year. With all the young players, and under the transfer ban, he really kind of set some players alight. Mason Mount really took off. Hudson-Odoi was having flashes, and maybe he needs to get back to that a little bit. Ziyech obviously struggled with injuries. Werner, with the pace and power of the Premier League, Havertz, really, they've not found a position for him. He's played about 8 different positions for Chelsea. So maybe going back and putting some more responsibility on those players, and Abraham, or unleashing Hudson-Odoi and taking some of the shine off some of the other players would do them some good.
I think Pulisic is an interesting one as well, because I was sort of tipping Pulisic for this breakout season. I know he didn't really have a pre-season at the start, and he struggled with injury coming into it, and sort of took him a while to sort of find his feet and get appearances under his belt. He could be dropped. I've been reading he could be dropped this weekend, but I feel like he's sort of been the one player actually making those darting runs and being quite direct and trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think that's kind of what it is. Like, Chelsea are a team of individuals at the moment without really, there's a lot of good ingredients without being a full meal, if you want to put it in an analogy. But I feel like Pulisic is one of those players who has been sort of taking the ball, running with it, driving it at the full back and cutting inside, just not quite getting that. Whereas last season he would have taken the shot, it would have flown in. This season it's not quite happening. And so he almost comes off a little bit selfish when he does that, even though he is actually the one player who I think is fully, or not fully, but he is engaged and he is trying to sort of drag his team through it. And it's a shame that if he was the one to be dropped for that, but I'm sure Lampard is working on an 11, on a system that suits him best. But right now, I couldn't tell you what the best Chelsea team is.
No clue. And that is the reason Lampard's paid that big money, because he's got to figure that out. Or like you said, by the 2021-22 season, we may see an Allegri in charge instead, trying to do that. But not a full meal. Lots of spices, haven't they? But maybe they're missing the protein just right now.
Spices and protein.
I didn't want to say the meat, because a lot of the players are vegan nowadays.
Yeah. Protein. Nice.
Protein where you get it.
Nice bit of PC meal prep there. Moving on. Fulham, Chelsea, what is your prediction for this one?
I'm going to say Fulham stretch their draw run to 6. I'd 1-1 there. I think Fulham could easily get a result.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll go with that. Hey, this is where Havertz probably takes off and scores 3. But yeah, let's go with that. Fulham, nice little 1-1 draw, and I'm sure they would probably take that. Moving on, the big game of the weekend. It's Liverpool, and it's versus Manchester United. And it's a Sky Sports Premier League and main event. It's 4:30 kickoff on Sunday, the 17th. It's funny how the landscape changes in the Premier League so quickly. A few weeks ago, it was Liverpool-Tottenham, to see if Tottenham could stop Liverpool from breaking away, just sort of breaking loose of the pack and just going absolutely wild. And now we're looking at it and thinking, And after that game, we were all like, well, there it goes. Congratulations, Liverpool. Trophy's yours. You've defended it. It's all good. And now we're sitting here. They've got to catch up to Man United. Manchester United. It's a funny old season. And we will chat more about the title race in sort of focus towards the end of this pod. For now, we'll sort of go into each of the teams. Liverpool, what's going wrong? What's going wrong?
Quite a lot, really.
Thanks.
Let's start at the back, eh? Let's start at the back.
Start at the back.
They've got maybe one fit centre back, and he's a central defensive midfielder anyway in Fabinho. Fabinho is the bright light defensively for Liverpool. He is top for tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerial duels won at Liverpool. What would they do without him? Frankly, and he's going to have a big job on his hands against United with their counter-attacking to shut that down. So the lack of centre-backs is an issue. Matip and Phillips not even really in contention. And then you move further forward, they've got loads of central midfielders now. They've got Thiago, who could play a massive role going forward, but their front line aren't scoring the goals that they used to. One goal from 4.87 XG against West Brom, Newcastle, Southampton, their last three. They drew all of this.
I was looking for the XG, I was having a little look around for the XG because I'm not usually a massive fan of the XG, but it does highlight, doesn't it? Because I think the easy thing with Liverpool this season is to just say, oh, Van Dijk's out, or it's the defence, or it's whoever the second centre-back is. But they do have Alisson there. They do have Trent there. They do have Robertson, and Fabinho is performing, remarkably well at centre-back. And I'm not saying that, the last slot is insignificant, like you still need a good defender in there, but they're coping, they're managing, they're still, they're not, the floodgates aren't opening in every game against them. But going forward, they scored 1 in 3, and that was against West Brom, the league's top score, the league's leakiest defense. It's funny how a trio like Mane, Salah, Firmino can just stop. It's funny. Is it fitness? Is it mentality? Is it something tactical? It's bizarre how such talents between each other, and they can be unselfish and they can provide for each other, apart from maybe Salah, who likes to go it alone sometimes. But it's funny how they can work together like that. They've got their own individual brilliance, and yet they're just not really coming up with the goods at the moment, especially after that 7-0 against Palace. It's bizarre. It just makes no sense. But yeah.
Yeah, they're all missing chances. It's not like they're not creating them. They are still creating enough to be winning these games, to not score against Southampton or Newcastle for Liverpool. Last season, that would have been, if you wrote that down on a piece of paper that you thought they wouldn't score against either, you get massive odds. This season, it gets to a point where I want to ask the question, when do we start to doubt them? Because Mo Salah is my fantasy captain more weeks than he's not. But when do we start doubting the fact that Liverpool are Liverpool? They have lost players. They've got players out of form. There's obviously loads of fixtures. No team is the team that they were last season. And Liverpool could slip away here. I don't think that they will. I think that there's quality. I think Klopp knows now how to manage his team and what they need to win. But it's worrying times, and every Liverpool fan I speak to, they're glum. They're just as glum as us Wolves fans.
Wow, Liverpool fans glum. Oh my word! I've literally heard everything now. Like that's it. I've completed the book of things to hear.
No comment.
If you are a glum Liverpool fan, please let's go and have a chat. Give me a call on blah 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 blah. I don't care. Just had to get a little rant out there. But yeah, you can see that in relative terms. That Liverpool, I'm sure after last season and making improvements, a couple of youngsters coming through, they'd have expected to actually expand, potentially extend their lead over the rest of the league. And yet here we are with Manchester United in first place. And I was mocked a little while ago, wasn't I, Mr. Wilson, for I totally knew what Solskjaer was doing, totally knew when he lost Champions League, and he was just trying to galvanise his team or something like that. But no, Manchester United are firmly in this. A very good run of form, barely lost a game in months. It's funny how they have just sort of broke out of the pack. Do you think it's I saw Jason McAteer actually this morning with Sky Sports basically saying that it was a false position for Man United. Nah. Are we believing that? Are we believing that? Oh, you are, aren't you?
I'm a little bit of a doubter. It doesn't feel that bright. Man United, top of the Premier League and the WSL for the first time ever, which is a lovely thing for Man United fans. But for Ollie, things are slightly less bright than for the women's team. The women's team have been a bit more dominant, and United are not. So their last 4 wins in the Premier League and the FA Cup, all by a 1-goal margin. Let me just point these out. So they got a deflection against Burnley that went through the smallest gap possible in Nick Pope's legs. That was ridiculous. He had a deflection against Wolves. Rashford with a last-minute winner, bounced off Romain Saiss, broke his heart. They had a set-piece header in the 5th minute against Watford that they held on to, didn't score again. And Fernandes scored a penalty, which ended up being the winner against Villa. So they are winning. They're doing that grinding, that snatching thing that Mourinho loves. That probably be quite painful for him to see. But I think that is indicative of the lack of super optimism there. I think Man United are used to teams steamrolling through these lower clubs, winning by 3 or 4 goals and eking out 1-0 wins through some penalties or some fortune. Makes their position do look a bit more tenuous than maybe it should.
But isn't that how teams win titles though? Like we're focusing on those, in in-depth scrutiny over Man United's goals there. But when Liverpool have picked up wins, they've picked up some pretty suspicious penalties over the seasons, and they'll have scored from deflections. They'll have scored goals that maybe they didn't quite deserve, or there's so many other circumstances for how every team scores goals. Do you not think it loosely balances out over the season though? I just think if this was 10 games in, I'd be a bit more dubious about Man United. I feel like we're at the halfway stage now, and I'm not saying they are the favourites. I don't think they are. We haven't even mentioned the favourites yet. We'll come on to that in a moment.
No, we haven't.
But yeah, I just think they deserve to be where they are right now. And Solskjaer's taken a lot of flack. And yeah, maybe I was too premature when I said he wasn't doing a bad job earlier in the season, and I've just got a bit lucky with the prediction because they have actually turned out all right. But I do think he is playing a system that gets the best out of the tools at his disposal. So he's getting the most out of Fernandes. Rashford has been playing. If you look at Rashford's stats, actually his consistency is far and above what it has been in previous seasons. He's getting the most out of his key players, and that for me deserves immense credit, really. And they're cutting out the mistakes as well. They're winning these games by a goal here and there. That's fine. And whereas, again, maybe in the past, if the players, we've seen goals Istanbul want to keep coming back to that shotgun sort of set piece from the corner, total lapse. Haven't really noticed that as much recently. I feel like the focus is there. Their concentration levels are up. They're sort of tuned into every game they're playing now. And I just think even if the margins are fine, they're still being cutthroat enough to put the goals away and actually, holding firm at the back. And 1-0 wins, 2-0 wins. That's exactly, if Mourinho was doing that with Spurs, we'd all be sitting here saying, what a masterclass, what a masterclass. So I think they have a long way to go. And this is actually a very good gauge. This is coming along at the right time, I think, for Man United. Pretty much exactly at the right time for Man United. But I think this is a fascinating match. And I'd love to know what your predictions are for this one.
Definitely. I think you're right. I think United deserve the credit. When I was watching the Wolves game, I did feel like it was inevitable that United would either score or Patricio would have to make a save to get us that draw. They've took up the clutch, that clutch mentality that Liverpool have lost this season.
It's Ferguson though, isn't it? That's how Ferguson. I'm not comparing them to the Fergie team because obviously they're not, but it's that level of, like, Fergie didn't win games 3 or 4-0 every single week. Like, Fergie won so many games from 2-1 down with 5 minutes to go. And I just wonder about the perception of Solskjaer, how that reflects on the team. I think if that was Ferguson grinding out these wins, I think we'd maybe have a slightly different perception on how United have performed this season. Sorry, couldn't do that.
Agreed. I think that's a very fair point. Doesn't mean I think that they're going to win this weekend, though. I mean, I don't. I think they're going to draw. I'm going to go for a second draw of 3. But I think it's going to be goals in this one. I think Liverpool will come out wanting to make a point. But United on the counter-attack, I think they will catch Liverpool cold at the back, because they might play, Henderson or something at centre-back. So a nice 2-2 keeps the league alive, doesn't it?
I've got this horrible feeling it's going to be one of those like infamous 0-0 draws where everybody gets psyched up for it and then nothing happens. I know I'm supposed to be like hyping up this game for you all to go away and watch it, but my heart says 5-5. My head's just telling me this is going to be an absolute slog. I agree with you. I think goals. I do think goals. There is, again, the ingredients there for a 2-2 draw, but this is just the sort of game that ends in nothing, isn't it? We'll see. Maybe I'm just really glum. Maybe this is just a glum 2021 approach.
Do you know what, though? We're here for the ride, Michael. We're here for the journey of the 90 minutes. And if it's a tedious one, like straight down the M1 with nothing to look at, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine, mate.
And moving up, we might as well address the title race now before we go into Premier League, Fantasy Premier League, to wrap it up. But who are you going for? What? It's such a tight league, and it's such a shame, actually, as well. I don't want to keep going about fans not being there, because it's a bit tedious when it's sort of mentioned every week in commentary. But it is a shame fans aren't there for such a title race. I mean, you've got what? I'm just looking at the table now. 7 points between 7th and top, and 4 points between Southampton in 7th and Liverpool in 2nd. So it's so tight up there. Who do you think are realistic contenders? How many sides do you think can actually win this Premier League title this year?
3.
Yeah.
I think to say more would be pushing it. I think that the title race is 7 teams large, though. Yeah. I think you're right to say down to Southampton. Southampton down in 7th. They play the football that they can beat anyone. Beat Liverpool, a couple of weeks ago. And it's not that surprising a result. They're an excellent football inside. Hazelhutton's got them drilled to within an inch of their sanity. But they're doing it every week, basically. Ings, having COVID, just got a positive test. It's a frustration, obviously, because he hasn't been there for a while. But yes, they're very much in a European top 4 race. Spurs are giving it away too much, aren't they? They could be top by points and points, but they did it against Wolves. Gave it away. They gave it away against Fulham yesterday. Gave it away against Palace. Dropping 2 points in games like those is not good enough. I think they're there for the top 4. They still can fight for that. I think the top spot, their mentality will be a worry for Mourinho still. Dropping off like that. Anyway, Everton, only 1 point off Liverpool. No reason why Everton can't go and win the league. I don't think they will go and win the league. They got that kind of clutch win against Wolves last game, which was painful, but very well deserved. I think in the end, Everton, they didn't have loads of chances, but they didn't have Calvert-Lewin. Richarlison only came off the bench. Michael Keane and Mina looked really good at the back. So top 4 for them. But and Leicester as well. They're going to be aiming top 4. Their sights won't be set on the Premier League title. And I think that's why they won't get there. I think that the 3 at the top, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, will all be only wanting to win the league at this point. And I think that's why it will be one of those 3.
I am not ruling out Leicester again, when we're saying 3, I'm going 3.5. I just think we're fools. We all did this before. We ruled them out. And Yeah, very much dark horses. But Maddison is
But
stepping up now. We have Vardy, who is just quite simply a Premier League legend at this point. It's not just a flash in a pan, obviously. I think there's quality in that side, and I think as Soyuncu comes back, as they've had a few injuries throughout the season. I know Fofana's stepped up with Evans, but once Soyuncu comes back, if he's back at full fitness, and Pereira, I know you like Pereira, if he comes back and does well, a bit more settled team, a few more options in there. I don't know. Leicester sort of dropped off the pace, didn't they, at the end of last season? Could you see that happening this time around with players coming back, actually sort of coming back fresh? Maybe it's the reverse. Could they actually step up in the second half of the season? I'm gonna say they're on the edge. I'm on the fringe of this title race. I'm gonna actually rule them in. I'm gonna rule them into the title race. I don't think they'll do it. But I genuinely. They look class. They look really good in the games I've watched them. Obviously, people like Harvey Barnes as well. Harvey Barnes and Maddison. I think don't underestimate the impact of the Euros on those two players. Because those two players, they're not even being talked about really in the squad at the moment, and they have a lot of work to get into the squads. And if they do put in that work, and if they do go on nice little runs, then they could earn themselves a spot in Southgate's thinking. But it's going to have to require some fireworks, and I just think Leicester have points to prove all across the pitch, and I'm interested. I could see them finishing top 4 or higher, and actually sort of taking this at least close to the wire. But I want to talk about Manchester City.
To prove in the dugout.
What was that? Sorry.
And a point to prove in the dugout as well. Mr. Brendan Rodgers been so close with Liverpool. Imagine him pipping Liverpool to the title this year. That would be huge.
Oh my word. Now we've got some glum Liverpool fan faces at that prospect of Brendan Rodgers lifting the trophy. And Manchester City are our final contenders. I just feel like Manchester City they're the favourites. They've got to be. They look scary, man. They look scary. And I know 1-0 against Brighton doesn't look too great from the outside, but it was that Chelsea game a few weeks ago. And I looked at the analysis of it. It was the first goal and second goal, and they were relentless. They barely gave a touch to Chelsea between those two goals. They've figured out a way to play without Aguero. And if you can figure out a way to play without Aguero, then I don't know. That feels like it's been Man City's problem for a while. They haven't had that backup, and now they've thought, you know what, we don't have that backup. We're going to play 6 midfielders, and we're still going to beat you. Phil Foden turns up sort of weekly now. I mean, that was an unbelievable finish the other night, cutting in from the left on his right foot, which that shouldn't be Phil Foden, but he's doing it. I just think they have a lot of weapons in that midfield who are coming into their own, and adding Aguero to a team who is 4 points away from the top already. Can you see anybody stopping them? And at the back as well, Diaz and Stones, just unmovable, unshakable at the back. And you just think a Man City team who can defend, that's not something we've seen in a long time, really, is it? They've never really been known for their defensive work. And here we are, probably their strongest defensive campaign so far. And, they're almost doing it in reverse now. They can defend, they're just starting to add the goals to it now. And I think for that reason, Man City, they're my boys this time around, I think.
Yeah, I worry about the lack of a goal scorer. They do huff and puff in games sometimes. I think that could come back to bite them. But yeah, they are deadly across the pitch. So you'd think someone would step up in most games. Shout out to Cancelo as well, who defensively really solid, but is picking up some really interesting positions when City are in the attack. Very kind of narrow, and then drifting more out wide around the back of a fullback, creating chances. He looks impressive. City aren't my favourites. I'm still sticking with Liverpool. That trio of Mane, Salah, and Firmino, I think might get them over the line still.
We will address this very soon. I'm sure next week we'll probably take a bit of a look across the league at the halfway point and see how teams are faring at both ends of the table. Very quickly, we have a double game week coming up in Fantasy Premier League, which has been slowly ruined by a couple of cancelled fixtures. And I'm not going to lie. I don't know if you saw my disappointed face, but when you said Danny Ings has just tested positive for COVID there, I didn't actually know that. And guess who I put into my fantasy team yesterday?
Oh,
I brought Danny Ings in for...
you got to wait for the deadline, Michael.
I know. I went early. I just wanted to get all my ducks in a row, so to speak. And I put him in, and then Southampton's game with Leeds got cancelled. In fact, let's go the whole hog here. I put Patrick Bamford and Danny Ings both in because they're double game weeks.
Oh!
Doesn't that suck? So now we have Bamford is down a game and Ings is down 2 games. So, I mean, probably a 4-point hit to put Antonio in, maybe. I guess 4-point
I've been
hit.
thinking Antonio, but
Antonio,
yeah, that is painful.
Yeah, if he plays both games, and that's your 4-point hit back, and anything on top of that's a bonus. So, might go for that, but pretty fed up, to be honest. I think I was going to go with...
Sorry about that, mate.
Yeah, I was going to go with a bench boost if I'd had the full array of players available, but there was a couple of injuries, so I just thought I'll hold on to my bench boost. I did use the free hit this week, and that's going quite well, if I'm honest. Just need a little clean sheet from Arsenal tonight, and then I think I'll have been up to about 60 points, which is pretty good for a week where a lot of the teams aren't playing. Do you have any fantasy Premier League tips for us this week?
Well, my team, I've got it stacked now with double game week players. I think the big one is City defenders with Palace at home and Villa at home. Villa obviously do score, but you think that's 2 clean sheets there. I might treble up and bring in Edison for Alex McCarthy, and then I've got Cancelo and Diaz. And just really go hard to see if I can get all those clean sheet points. But some of the nice ones in there, really. Salah is going to be my captain. Burnley at home in the second game is a tasty one. Souček, though, if you can get Souček in now, this is a good old time. Burnley at home, then West Brom at home. Big header in there, surely.
It's not a big header. Like, not bad. I've got Edison, actually. I've got Edison and Stones, so that's pretty good. I've got my team's all right, you know. Edison, Dyer, Stones, Chilwell, Lowton, Fernandez, Salah, Grealish, Bamford, Ings, Kane. So I'm feeling like there's something in there. And Neto on the bench as well, so I don't know if Neto against West Brom, are you backing him? Nah.
Oh, yeah, I back Neto all day. He's wonderful.
Interesting. Well, maybe that's what I can do, actually. Put Neto in for Ings. Anyway, I'll work that out later. But yeah, it's an interesting game week. So make sure you get your transfers in and make sure you check which players have and do not have the COVID before you make critical errors like myself. Thank you very much for joining me, Mr. Jake Wilson. What's coming up in Match of the Day magazine in 2021 to kickstart the year?
Well, loads is coming up in 2021. We've got some big projects ahead. We've got lots coming onto the YouTube. But the current mag is a very special one. It's the January transfer window. As we know, we haven't really spoke about it much because it's been a bit slow till now. But we've got 100% transfers issue on shelves right now. It's got some brand new match attacks on there and everything you need to know about the transfer window. All the biggest deals that have happened in the past, all the ultimate transfer quizzes that you could want. It's a pretty tasty one, Michael. And any younger readers out there, or any parents of any young football fans out there, it's not a bad one to look at, I don't think.
Very nice. Very nice. I like your plugs. You should be like a guy on the radio, you know? You should do that. Just your little beaming voice coming over the... Yeah, anyway, I'm just running down roads I don't need to go down. Thank you very much for joining me. And you can also go to radiotimes.com/sport for all the latest previews on every sporting event coming up. We have Premier League. We have a bit of FA Cup next weekend. We've got Six Nations coming up in February, which is just a bit mad. We have a lot of stuff going on in the next couple of months. We've got a bit of Masters Snooker on at the moment. And you can also follow us. You can actually follow us now. We're on Twitter. We're doing the Twitter thing now. You can follow us at Radio Times Sport. Have I got that right? Radio Times Sport. You can give us a follow, give us a few likes and a few retweets, and get the ball rolling, because there's not really many people at the moment. So I'm just screaming into the void. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you next week. Cheers. Bye.